This show is nothing without me.
The podcast is finally good again.
Never forget that you have the tools to build a life on your own terms. Forget the haters. This is FounderQuest.
So how's the vacation been for everybody?
Good, for the most part. So I've been a little cynical today, maybe because like my family has been sick the past week. My wife specifically, and so she's not feeling well. I've been on kid duty, and kids are cooped up, and tired of dad. So
I'm so sorry,
yeah,
Josh.
but we'll get through that. It is what it is.
Well, if you need to take a little break and go wrangle some kids.
Oh, I am ready to get back to work.
Just remember Macklemore said, right? These are the good old days.
Right. It is true. No, I have been enjoying the time with the kids for sure, especially like after they go to sleep and I have time to reflect on the day.
Was Christmas great? Did your little ones just love it?
They did. Yeah,
did your little ones love it, Ben? Your slightly bigger ones?
Well, if they both hadn't had the stomach flu, they would have loved it.
Oh my God, everybody's sick this Christmas.
Everyone is sick, yeah.
Even one of my friends back in Arkansas, I was like, how was Christmas? And she's like, oh, I had the flu. So I don't know.
Yeah, my brother's daughter got the flu over Christmas too. So yeah, it seems to be going around.
Nuts.
But we did get a new board game as a family thing for Christmas.
What's that?
5 Minute Dungeon. If you haven't heard of that, it's a co-op card-based game. It's got a 5-minute time limit thing. So you're rushing, you're playing cards to try and beat the monsters and obstacles and stuff to get through the dungeon. And it's pretty frantic and it's a lot of fun. So check it out. It's like nice. 2 to 5 players. It's 8 years old and above. I think it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Can we link that up in the show notes?
You betcha. With
a Amazon affiliate link.
It's so cool that you can just say that and somehow it'll happen. I'm not sure anymore how it happens. It just does.
It doesn't have to be an affiliate link for the record, Ben.
Yeah.
But if it is, you're totally covered because I've just disclosed.
Yeah. Well, Ben will just slide in his own affiliate link in there.
Right.
Yeah. I know for a long time, Josh, you listened to Dan Carlin's Common Sense podcast, which is now I think, pretty much defunct. And I listened to that too. And, he always talked to his producer. I think his name was Ben, right?
His name is Ben,
and the joke was like, you don't know if Ben is real, but he's just talking to Ben throughout the show. And so I think maybe we should start doing that with our own Ben Finley.
He really is he's our producer. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Our marketing expert, Ben Finley, who is involved in the production of this podcast. So we should start doing that. And that would be really weird. And,
the dynamic on Common Sense was great though. Like, cause he's always like, making kind of fun jabs at him. And then like in the intros, like, the announcer voice is like taking jabs at Dan because I assume that Ben is writing the scripts for those.
Oh yeah. I mean, okay. Fun fact. Our cheesy announcer voice was a direct ripoff of that show.
Yeah, it was.
Voice. Yeah.
We're fans.
I don't have any original ideas. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about Strengths Finder, right?
Strengths Finder. Yeah.
Should I set the scene?
Starr, like your number one strength, I'm just looking at it right now, is ideation.
It is. I've got all the ideas. So maybe we should back up and be like, and be like, what is Strengths Finder? Like, why are we? Okay. So a couple months ago, we all took the Strengths Finder assessment, right? Strengths Finder is a sort of test you take online, and there's a book that goes with it. I think it's called Strengths Finder 2.0. Link that up in the show notes.
The assessment's run by Gallup, right?
Yeah.
The polling.
They're good at asking people questions.
Yeah.
They have some experience there.
Yeah, they changed the name to CliftonStrengths, by the way. You can still find another Strengths Finder, but they call it CliftonStrengths now. I'm just going to call it Strengths Finder for consistency.
Okay, after beloved Cheers character Cliff Clavin.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Can somebody tell me what's the purpose of Strengths Finder?
Find out what your strengths are so you can be better.
I think one of the big things is that like in business, a lot of businesses use it as like an assessment tool or as an alternative assessment tool. And I think the idea is that like a lot of like traditional assessments would focus on like the areas that you're weak, like your performance is weak in.
Yeah, we're talking about personal assessments, right?
Like personal assessments. Yeah. So like you go in for your, whatever your annual assessment with your boss or whatever, or performance review, I should say. And a lot of those like have tended to focus on like areas that you're weak in or that you're working on improving, kind of like, where you are with your weaknesses. But the Strengths Finder assessment is basically like the idea of focusing on your strengths. There's a lot more opportunity, or I guess a lot more bang for your buck if you focus on your strengths versus on your weakness. So if you can focus on improving what you're already good at versus trying to get better at something you might be weak in, you might find a lot more success.
So the idea is you like log into this thing and you take this test, and how long did it take? Like half an hour or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Something around there. It was less than an hour, I think.
Yeah. And then it spits out a report and tells you a list of your strengths. And it's got a lot of them. And the book sort of goes through each of them. I don't know how many there are, like 50 or something. And you sort of get ranked in them.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And yeah, so you get to see like your top 5, and it goes through and gives you sort of a list of action items. It gives you this whole report as well, suggestions like how to take advantage of the strength, like things to watch out for.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. So I got a question for you guys, since we're like we're the scrappy little bootstrapped, tell it like it is company. So is Strengths Finder just sort of like late stage capitalist corporatist like bullshit?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I got introduced to StrengthsFinder through a friend who worked at Microsoft, and he said that their whole team took this assessment and shared their results with each other. And he said the benefit that he saw from doing that was being able to interact with his teammates better, to understand what their motivations were, and to understand what they would be good at and what he would be good at. And so they could, as a team, be stronger. So if late stage capitalism is all about working better, sure, yes, that's what it's all about. But no,
I'm just trying to throw some spice in there. Like ever since Mike Perham said we weren't spicy enough, I've been trying to like court controversy.
I love that question, though. I think that the idea behind the Strengths Finder thing, not only in like improving or making yourself better or more efficient or whatever, it's really about like working together. And I know like the whole corporation, like the whole enterprise, like synergy thing, people love this idea of like, if you put different types of people together and they, all of their skills kind of blend and they synergize. This is kind of like, that's kind of the bullshit lingo for, I think, what we're talking about a little bit. This whole idea of like a bunch of different people with different skill sets or different things they're good at coming together and then working together originally came out of an economic idea, which was called comparative advantage. That was the idea of like actual countries or nations or economies, and the idea of specialization. So back in the day when they were studying, like, is it better like for single economy or a country to be completely self-sufficient and like produce everything themselves, so that they can basically like be an island and be completely self-sufficient? Or is it better for countries to specialize in certain areas and then trade with other countries who specialize in other areas? And they found that it turns out like most countries have things they're good at and other countries have other things they're good at. And it's better to trade and share either ideas or, what they're producing.
Just a no, that's comparative advantage, right? I initially read that as competitive advantage and I was a little confused.
Yeah, no, competitive doesn't, that doesn't enter into it, I don't think.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like this is my role in the podcast is I just like go into the minefield and blithely walk through it, and whatever explodes on me, I'm like, hey, there's a mine here. And then I just point that out.
You just like to blow things up.
Yeah. It's a little bit corporate, but I think it's useful. Like I found the results useful. Like I wouldn't necessarily use this as a way to, like it's the only way to assess somebody or sort of get to know them or assign them tasks or whatever. Like I wouldn't be like, okay, take this Strengths Finder test. I don't know you. And then based on this, I'm going to give you a job or, give you a particular responsibility. Like I wouldn't do that, but it's sort of interesting as a sort of a prompt, sort of like, oh, think about these things. Like maybe think in this direction, maybe focus a little bit of your introspection in this area. And here's some interesting prompts.
Yeah, I think I found it really useful. I was kind of in a burned out kind of state. This was like back in August or whatever. And I wanted to like reevaluate what I was doing at the time, like in the business and kind of just in my professional life and stuff, and see like if I was doing the right things. And this was like one tool that kind of helped me like kind of think about like where I should be like putting my effort, basically.
Yeah, totally. Like, I think it's also useful. And one reason we brought it up in conclaves in the past, or I think Ben brought it up because his friend had mentioned it to him, was just to, like Ben said, to essentially help us sort of understand each other and sort of work with each other in a way that plays to each other's strengths.
Yeah.
So I think that's been pretty useful.
You mentioned not using it as a like a hiring tool, which is, I think, one thing that a lot of people do use it for is like they'll give it to it might not be the first round of an interview, but if you pass like the a couple initial rounds of an interview, they'll ask you to take it as like kind of one, I guess, facet of the process. I'm not totally against that idea. I think the biggest advantage of using it as a potential hiring tool or as a way of evaluating people on your team is not like that you're looking for people that are going to fit well, like in terms of like having like similar strengths, but like you're really looking for people that have opposite strengths from you. Like that's the whole idea. Like it's kind of like a tool to like increase the diversity of strengths on your team. So the idea is like you want to find people that don't necessarily have, all the same core strengths as like everyone else. It's kind of funny, being 4 developers who are pretty much the same type of person. We found that we all actually do have a lot of similar strengths. At least for me, that was one thing that came out of it for me was like, in the future, I think we could do well to hire more people who have different skill sets.
Yeah. Though we are, pretty similar, we do have some pretty distinct differences in the top 5. So the CliftonStrengths, the Strength Finder 2, it focuses on the top 5 things as areas that you really want to be spending time to develop your strengths. And, of those top 5, the 3 of us, we have a pretty good spread there. Like there's not a whole lot of overlap. So even though, we are very similar and have very similar like business backgrounds, we do have some diversity when it comes to what our top 5 strengths are.
Do we want to share what our top 5 are? Because I don't have yours up here. So I'm speaking from memory. So my memory might be fuzzy.
Does everybody have their own up?
I do have my own here. I actually have mine printed out because I've kept them on my desk to review.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have a physical
old school,
desk,
right?
Josh?
I know.
That's so 1996.
and there's paper on it.
Oh my God. What? I just
not a lot of paper.
My gravity well.
Right.
Nothing is real. So, oh my God, I've got a funny story. Can I go off on a tangent before we? Okay. Please. So partially I'm going off on a tangent because it's a funny story, but partially also I really want to tease these results because I feel like people are just like sitting on the edge of their seats waiting to see what our strengths are. My daughter's birthday is coming up. It's coming up soon. And we're like, okay, what should we get her? She already has a lot of Christmas presents. And we're like, okay, we should get her something where she can play music that is not a like iPad or any sort of tablet or anything like that, where she's going to want to watch like stupid YouTube videos all day. And so we were like looking at all this stuff. And we're like, okay, well, here's this like, there's a couple different devices. It's like, okay, kids MP3 player. That's cool. It's like, well, I don't have a ton of ripped CDs, especially not children's CDs. So there's one that hooks up to Spotify and it's got these little statues and things. And you move the statue into a certain little slot and then it plays. It's like sounds like some video game or something. But then like eventually Abby and I were just sitting back and we were like, wait a second. We just want a CD player for like the price of one of these like fancy things that hooks up to Spotify, which is like $200. We can get her a CD player and a lot of CDs.
Yeah. So, put those CDs to use.
Yeah. We just got her like 5 CDs and a CD player.
Nice.
Anyway, so that's sort of that's the whole thing. It's like when we think about it, that is like the physical desk versus everything being virtual. And it's like, I was just going to say this, like my first instinct is to be like, oh, it's got to hook up to Spotify and do all this stuff.
It has to be.
But no, it's just a physical thing. It's fine sometimes.
Did you introduce it to her as a compact disc player?
We should. It's not her birthday yet.
Yeah. So right. Okay. Yeah. So you've got some time to think about how you explain what this thing is that you put a physical media into.
I don't know. I think she's going to love it. Like she really wants to put like the DVDs into, we occasionally rent DVDs because we have like the only surviving movie rental store like near our house. And so we rent those and she loves putting them in. But anyway, so Strengths Finder, do we all want to like read our own strengths, or is that TMI?
I mean, I'm cool with it. I'm not going to like encourage you guys to if you don't want to.
I was reading through my strengths and getting ready for this podcast, and they were, like a lot of, personality tests. When you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense because it means you, right? You. But my number 3 strength actually taught me something as I was reading through the notes, the extra material they give you to understand what your strengths are. So my number 3 strength is achiever. And the way that they describe this is basically you're a person that always needs to be accomplishing something. What they said is that like every day, because of this achiever strength, every day you need to have some sort of accomplishment or else you feel like the day was wasted. And not like just every work day, but literally every day, work days, weekends, vacations, you have to be doing something. You have to accomplish something. And I was like, wow, that really is me. Like I am so frustrated if I'm not doing something.
This is coming from the guy who like upgrades a server, a database for fun on New Year's on New Year's Eve.
What are we paying money for this for? You can do that to me, Ben.
But as I thought about it some more, I thought, that's also though to me a warning. Like it's like some video games can be dangerous to me because they have these game mechanics that are based on achievements, right? You unlock this goal or you get this level or whatever. And so those kinds of games can be addictive to me because I'm like, yeah, I want to get that next thing. I want to accomplish that thing, right? And so it's both a strength and a potential weakness I have to watch out for.
Yeah, I like that about how because you get a page basically on each of your strengths that describes like the upsides and the downsides are. And I really like the downside, like that they include the downsides, like things you need to look out for or the pitfalls or whatever. So my number 1 was intellection, which is, I guess I appreciate intellectual discussions and I guess going deep on topics. 2 was input. 3 was learner. I guess I like to learn things. 4 is context, which I thought was interesting because context, as I recall, related like historical context and like the past. And so I had noticed like I've been like gotten kind of a little bit into history and like history reading. And I've always appreciated going back in the past and like looking for like lessons or trends and that sort of thing to see how like things work. And so context like that kind of fit with that. Like it's distilling lessons from the past or whatever.
That one's interesting because that one is also on mine and you and I have had lots of like historical discussions.
Yeah. So that explains probably why we love to talk history and all that other stuff. And then 5 was strategic. And then I'll just go through so those are the top 5. They kind of like, they put those in bold. So those are like the ones that you really focus on. And then the next 5. So there's 10 total that they'll tell you that are your strengths. So the 6 through 10 are basically like additional things that you can focus on after the first 5. So those are focus, relator, futuristic, discipline, and responsibility. The last 2 are fun because those were learned over time, over lots of mistakes and lots of slacking off. But turns out
the last 2 again?
Discipline and responsibility.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, probably if you would have known me in my early 20s, those would not have been in my top 10. But as 10 years of freelancing will definitely instill some discipline and responsibility if you're good at it.
Well, cool. So you mentioned that I'm looking at this report right now, and you mentioned already that they give you 10 fields to strengthen, and these are listed under a heading called strengthen. And so then that leaves fields like 11 through 34, I guess, category strength. Like, what are they? If they're not your strength, what are they? Attributes?
What do they call them? Yeah, something like that. They don't call them weaknesses.
No, they don't call them weaknesses. They put them under a heading called navigate, which I thought was the most
like you just
mealy mouthed, like neutral.
You just have to deal with it.
Yeah, so you just have to navigate it.
It's not like you get 10 good things you're good at, and then all of the other skills you just completely ignore, right? Like you're not supposed to completely like drop off and like, so like empathy is not even in my top 20. I don't think that doesn't mean that I shouldn't try to have empathy, right?
All right, well, I'll go. My first one is ideation. And one of the interesting, so that's basically coming up with ideas and tweaking things. And it was interesting because it gives you like these action items you can do to sort of take advantage of this. And one of them I thought was interesting was this. It says, make small changes in your work or home routines. Experiment, play mental games with yourself because you will get bored quickly. So these adjustments can help keep you engaged. And I thought that was really interesting because I have never explicitly figured that out, but that's something I sort of do just intuitively. Also, it's like your limitless thoughts and ideas, which limitless is a bit much. Your thoughts and ideas can sometimes overwhelm and confuse people. Yes. I'm like, I've come up with the best thing ever. And it's like, nobody has any idea what the hell I'm talking about. So that was number 1. Number 2 is strategic, which is coming up with strategies and thinking about all the different ways scenarios can play out and picking, the best one. Number 3 is context, which is sort of historical stuff like Josh already talked about. 4 is developer, because like I'm a web developer, and that's not what that means. It actually means that you like to develop people's skills, right? It's sort of like a teacher almost, like you help people get better. 5 is empathy. I'm a pretty empathetic person. The next 5, which are sort of like your not so great strengths, I guess, are intellection, being intellectual input. I don't even know what that is. What does that mean? What's input, Josh? You have that too.
Yeah, I do. I think
it's all about, that's my number 2. It's all about when you're gathering information from all over the
gathering.
place.
Yeah, it's like gathering and collecting and storing it, right? Like having a system.
So like the Fieldstone method.
Yeah, so like Fieldstone. Okay. Yeah, having it talked about like having a place to like store your research and that sort of thing.
Okay, so there's that. Number 8 is maximizer, which is min-maxing and trying to find optimal sort of paths for that. And that's definitely something I've done, especially like that's something that I don't even know if this says this is in the negatives to this, but I'm just going to say it's a negative, and that like, it's like I'm a sucker for premature optimization. And for, it's like I was, for some reason, like I'll spend like, if you're like, okay, Starr, give me $1, I'll be, okay, here's $1. But if you're like, well, there's 2 products and one's $1 cheaper, like I could spend an hour trying to figure out which one I should buy. The other day, I ordered something on Amazon and it seemed to be the same product, and one was $3 more expensive than the other one. It seemed to be exactly the same. It drove me insane. I couldn't figure out why it was. And I eventually ordered the more expensive one because it had the most reviews. So I was like, well, maybe it's not a fake one. Number 9, positivity. I'm a pretty positive person, even though I think I haven't necessarily displayed that a lot. And number 10 is learners, like learning things. And I would also like to share my worst one. They say these aren't your worst ones, but I'm going to say they're your worst ones because it's more fun that way. So my number 34 strength, the thing I'm least good at is significance. And I don't know what that is, so I'm going to scroll down. People exceptionally talented in the significance team want to make a big impact. They're independent and prioritize projects based on how much influence they will have on the organization or people around them. Yeah, I don't give a shit about that. So that's about right.
You mentioned what was your number 1, by the way?
My number 1 is not remembering things. Ideation.
So I think you were talking about how like you need to be careful of like overloading people with information. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget which one of mine was that, but that was one of the potential, like whatever they call them, things to watch out for. And that totally made sense. Like I tend to give people too much information when I'm trying to like, especially people that like aren't interested in business theory and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I can think of several examples where I've gone away and worked on something for like a month and then just made it some sort of summary and like given it to you all and it's been like, here, you've got 5 minutes to like fully understand all the nuance in this. It's like, okay, maybe that's not the most fair approach.
Yeah.
So what do we take away from this? Do we think this is a useful exercise?
Totally. Yeah. I think you can learn some things about yourself. I mean, you can do it other ways too. You can take the Myers-Briggs and you can take what color is your parachute. That's a good personality test. I like that one. But I like the way that the Strengths Finder lists out the things that you'd be good at, and based on your input into the questionnaire, obviously, and what things you can focus on and how you can, I think, present yourself to your team on things you can take up. Like my strength on achiever, for example, I talked about a little while ago. I know that I'm going to every day be wanting to accomplish something, right? So if something needs to be done, I can say to my team, hey, I can take that because That's like my thing. I want to get, mark things off the to-do list. So, if someone doesn't have that strength, be like, okay, Ben, you can take that thing that has to get done that I don't want to do,
Yeah. Yeah. I've noticed that I have that. I mean, like, I think we all have that to some extent, like where, even just as people like to accomplish things. Like, I think one of the things that like makes us happy is like actually making progress in our worlds. But I found like that for me, like, it doesn't have to necessarily be like checking something off a list. Like, because I have that, like the learner, whatever, intellection thing is like high on my list. I'm okay. Like if I learn something that I feel like has really like moved me forward or something like that. Like I'm okay with, like, I can consider that like, making progress on a task or something like that, which isn't something I probably would have thought of before I took this thing. So I've tried to double down on that. And like, if I find myself like spending a day just like reading a book or something, I'm not feeling like a total slacker, assuming it's not like Harry Potter or something.
That's we don't support J.K. Rowling in this family. So I just want to expand on your point a little bit, Josh. I think it was a really good one. It's very interesting because one thing that I really like about the test and the results is that each of these different, I'm going to call them strengths, even though they're not everybody has them as strengths, right? But I'm just going to call them that because I don't know what to call them. Each one of these is weighted the same. Like, none of them is given any sort of priority over other ones. And I think that's really cool because some of these things in society, I feel like, are kind of weighted. And I feel like in my mind, like, I will feel guilty if I'm not checking, tasks off a list. But to be honest, lists can be very overwhelming to me. And I really don't enjoy working, off of lists. And that's why Achiever is number 29 out of 34 for me. But it's really interesting because it's like, okay, well, maybe I'm not so great at working on like tasks on lists, but I've got all this stuff up here. I've got, empathy. That's something that's not super explicitly valued a lot because it's kind of a soft skill and it's kind of hard to see. The same thing with like the developer and context. In a weird way, the assessment sort of made me realize, okay, like, it's like maybe I'm not the best at like checking tasks off of lists, but there are these other things I'm really good at. And so that was kind of cool. And that was kind of eye-opening.
Yeah. And the idea like of developing those, like giving those skills or those strengths time to develop or, improve, you can get the most gain out of that. And you don't know what will come out of that, like in the future. Maybe, focusing on empathy will be the most productive thing you can do right now.
Yeah. And I mean, get the most gain, but also just kind of be happiest, I think, because it really sucks trying to do stuff every day that you are terrible at.
Well, that's I mean, like, you're happy a lot of times, like, you're happy if you're successful at something. And if you're, it's easier to be successful at something that you're really good at versus something that you just aren't built for, doesn't come naturally to you.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
I think when it comes time to sell yourself, whether it's as a freelancer trying to get a client or it's if you're trying to get a job, you're in that interview, I think having a good awareness of what your strengths are and being able to market yourself, to, create the packaging around yourself that will sell yourself the best. If Starr goes into an interview and says, oh, I love working from lists, right? And they hire him like, no, this guy sucks, right? But
hello. They're not called sucks. They're called navigate, Ben. I navigate lists.
But if Starr goes into that same interview saying, I can really connect because I have strength and empathy, or I can really bring great ideas to the table because I have strength and ideation, right? If he focuses on those, then that's going to make all the difference, right? And finding the right fit for yourself, whether it be a job or a client or whatever.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Like what? That sounds like the woo strength, Ben. Do you mind telling me what number you are for woo?
Let me look at that.
Mine is 33.
32.
out of 34.
32. Wait, what? I've got the highest woo? Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm sorry. I assumed your woo would be much higher because that was just a great point and a great argument.
He totally wooed you.
He did. I'm wooed. Okay, wait a second. No, that's not actually... Okay, I looked it up. That's not
what it is
about convincing people. It's like, you know, when you're out on New Year's Eve and you go, woo! Like, that's what that's. Yeah, that's what that is.
So yeah, he's just a party animal. Number 32 for me is developer, which is in your top 10, Starr, right? So
yeah,
I'm glad that that we don't have, you know, that we have some things that are completely flipped or inverse. I think maybe that's one of the reasons for our success.
I wouldn't say this has led me to consider this, but I've been thinking like sort of going forward, like things involving, you know, training, things involving sort of like, I wouldn't say like HR, but things involving a bit more of a sort of management, you know, sort of like mentorship type role, like seem pretty appealing to me as opposed to sort of more individual contributor stuff. So I don't know. It's just, it's an interesting mirror to look through.
A+, would buy again.
All right. So this concludes our infomercial for CliftonStrengths Finder.
I don't think they have an affiliate program, unfortunately.
No, they should. They should. They can buy us something off our Amazon wish list if they want to.
There you go.
All right. Do we have anything else to say? Are we done here?
I'm done.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. I just want to say I appreciate y'all's diversity in spirit or whatever we're calling this stuff.
Likewise.
Agreed.
All right. Well, signing out. And wait. I got to do the spiel. Okay, if you want to write for us, we hire writers who can do technical blog posts and stuff for our blog. Go to, you know, our blog at honeybadger.io and look for the write for us thing in the header or the top nav. If you would like to go and review us on a podcast service of your choice, that would be awesome. Well, we all survived the holidays. And so I think we're going to get back to like our regular schedule and not have any breaks until the sort of early spring vacation month off that we all take. And then after that comes the May vacation.
I still got to take the Santa hat off the honey badger.
Oh, I did that yesterday.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yep.
Man, see, he's got it on his list.
That's right.
Yeah, it probably went on the list.
I didn't even notice we had a Santa hat.
Well, I'll post the graphic anyway.
Okay, thank you. So I was just joking about all those vacations, but we'll be back to our normal schedule. So look forward to having lots of chats with y'all.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So see you later. Bye.
Bye.
FounderQuest is a weekly podcast by the founders of Honey Badger. Zero instrumentation, 360-degree coverage of errors, outages, and service degradations for your web apps. If you have a web app, you need it. Available at honeybadger.io. Want more from the founders? Go to FounderQuestPodcast.com. That's one word. You can access our huge back catalog or sign up for our newsletter to get exclusive VIP content. FounderQuest is available on iTunes, Spotify, and other purveyors of fine podcasts. We'll see you next week.